Did I know better? Yes, I knew better. Did I do better? No, I did not do better. And there's something about chocolate that I didn't quite know what it was that drew me to chocolate. So I did some research and now let's find out together. Food of the gods. Everything you need to know about chocolate. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Quality of Life Quest. My name is Anneke. And today I want to talk about chocolate because it's chocolate. And let's start with a confession. Last year I was home for 4 months. Different story. But during those 4 months, I gained 2 uniform sizes. And sure, it was a combination of being at home, sitting down, not running around on a ward at least 3 days a week. But I may have self-medicated with chocolate peanuts. Not just chocolate, not just peanuts, but chocolate peanuts. That was my go-to thing, my self-medication. And yeah, 2 uniform sizes later, I went back to work. 4 months, 2 uniform sizes. That's quite a lot. Did I know better? Yes, I knew better. Did I do better? No, I did not do better. And there's something about chocolate that I didn't quite know what it was that drew me to chocolate. So I did some research and now let's find out together. And by the way, I'm not eating chocolate peanuts anymore. They priced themselves out of the market. There's less chocolate peanuts in a bag and it costs more. So that's a kind of shrinkflation going on that I didn't agree with. I have found some alternatives though. I'll let you know later. But no more chocolate peanuts. But yeah, the whole saga got me thinking about chocolate, about why I eat it, but I'm not alone, so why we eat it, what it actually does to your body, to your brain, to your hormones, where it comes from, what it costs, not just money, but also in human terms, about the gap between what we think we're eating and what we're actually eating, why chocolate in the United States tastes so different from chocolate in the UK and European Union, and about sauerkraut. I will come back to that later. So that's what this podcast is about. It's not about making you feel guilty, life's hard enough, and chocolate is one of the real nice pleasures. And I'm not here to take that away from you or from myself. There might be a bit of secondary gain there. But yeah, let's dive into this chocolate story. Before we go any further, drop into the comments, what is your thing with chocolate? Do you have a daily square? Do you have a drawer somewhere with some emergency stash? Do you have a bag and you promise yourself you only have 1 or 2 bits and in the end you end up with an empty bag? Tell me. And there's no judgment there, but it's just to see what everyone else is doing. Okay, let's get this started. From sacred ceremony to heart-shaped boxes, the real history of chocolate. So before chocolate became a bar, it was a ceremony. It was something the Mayans and the Aztecs prepared with reverence. They offered it to the gods and consumed it in rituals that marked the most significant moments of a human life: birth, death, marriage, war. And they called it cacao. The Aztecs called the drink that was made from the cacao chocolat, which roughly means to drink chocolate together. So not alone, but together. And the communal, the ceremonial, shared nature of that thing was built into the name. What they drank at the time was nothing like you would recognize today. It was really bitter, really bitter. It was ground cacao beans mixed with water, chili, and spices. And then they were pouring it back and forth between vessels to create a froth. There was no sugar and no milk, no sweetness at all. And the bitterness was the point. The cacao was seen as medicine, as a stimulant, and a sacred substance. The cacao bean itself was so valued that it was used as a currency. So say you could buy a turkey for 100 cacao beans and a rabbit for 10. And the bean that became your chocolate bar was once literally used as money. And then when the Spanish arrived in the Americas in the 16th century, they encountered this drink and were not immediately impressed. Bitterness was not what they were looking for, but they did notice something, that the people who drank it, they had energy, endurance, and resilience. And that seemed to be connected to this strange, bitter drink. So they did take it back to Europe. They kept the name, more or less. And in the end, cacao became chocolate and Europe went mad for it. Now, for the most of the next 3 centuries, chocolate remained a drink, a luxury drink, consumed mostly by wealthy people. But it was still understood that it had some medicinal properties. It was sold by apothecaries and doctors recommended it. And it wasn't something you could eat, it was something you drank. And it still kind of carried traces of that sacred origin. And then in 1847, G.S. Fry and Sons in Bristol created the first solid chocolate bar. They combined cacao powder, sugar, and cacao butter into a solid form, and all of a sudden you could lift it up, take it with you, share it, and it was an entirely new way of consuming chocolate. And then in 1861, Richard Cadbury created the first heart-shaped chocolate box for Valentine's Day. Now, to me, that was a bit of a shock, not because of the invention of the heart-shaped box. It was more the date of Valentine's Day. So I looked it up, and when was Valentine's Day first celebrated? It was 496 AD. Who knew? I didn't. Anyway, I always thought of it as a kind of modern day thing, but it wasn't. So, 1861, first heart-shaped chocolate box for Valentine's Day. So in one product, one man connected chocolate to romantic love, and he did it so effectively that the association has persisted for over 160 years. We still give chocolate on Valentine's Day, and we still associate chocolate with love and comfort and desire. The marketing decision made by one Victorian businessman has shaped how billions of people relate to a food product for a century and a half. And it shows the extraordinary power of attaching a product to human emotion, so fundamental that the attachment never loosens. Marketing, man, it's strong. And it sets up everything we're going to talk about in this series, because chocolate's relationship with emotion, with love, with comfort, with reward, with ceremony, it's not only marketing. It's also, as we've discovered, biochemistry. The Mayans were onto something real. There are compounds in cacao that generally affect how you feel. The ceremony and the science are not as far apart as you might think. But the journey from cacao to the chocolate peanuts, the journey has cost, and some of those costs are extraordinary. We'll get to that, but first we'll look into the science of why chocolate actually works. What chocolate does for you, and the sauerkraut twist. So this might be a bit science dense, but there you go. It's part of the story and needs to be told. Chocolate, specifically dark chocolate, it contains a collection of compounds that generally affect how you feel, not in a vague marketing speak way, but in a measurable, documented, this is what happens in your brain and body way. So let's go through them. And I might kind of fumble the words because reading words and saying them out loud are two different things. So here goes. The first word, theobromine. I can't help it. That's what it is. So theobromine is the primary stimulant in chocolate. It isn't caffeine, although chocolate contains small amounts of caffeine too. Theobromine, it's a vasodilator, which means that it widens blood vessels, which is why dark chocolate has documented effects on blood pressure. It's also a mild stimulant, which is gentler and longer lasting than caffeine, without a sharp spike and crash. It's a bronchodilator, which means it opens up airways. And theobromine has actually been studied as a potential cough suppressant, and it's the reason chocolate is toxic to dogs. Their bodies metabolize theobromine much more slowly than humans do, and it accumulates to dangerous levels. Theobromine is why you feel alert after eating chocolate without feeling jittery. It's the steady, warm energy that's different from coffee. Magnesium. Dark chocolate is one of the highest dietary sources of magnesium available, and magnesium deficiency is extraordinarily common. Estimates suggest that up to 80% of people in developed countries are deficient. Magnesium is involved in over 300 enzymatic processes in the body. It's essential for sleep, muscle function, nerve function, blood sugar regulation, and mood. When you crave chocolate, particularly around stress or before a menstrual cycle, your body may generally be asking for magnesium. This is not a rationalization. It's part of, what's in chocolate and what it does to your body. Anandamide, the name comes from the Sanskrit word for bliss. Anandamide is naturally occurring cannabinoid produced in your brain, and it binds some receptors as THC, the active compound in cannabis. Chocolate contains anandamide and also contains compounds that slow the breakdown of anandamide in the brain, meaning that the bliss feeling lasts longer. And that's real and it's documented. And this is why eating chocolate feels, briefly, like everything is slightly more okay than it was before. And now the sauerkraut twist. Phenylethylamine. It's a compound most associated with the feeling of falling in love. And your brain produces it when you're attracted to someone. It creates that particular excited, slightly euphoric, heart rate elevated feeling of new love. Chocolate contains PEA. And this is why chocolate is marketed as romantic. The biochemical connection to the feeling of love is real. And here's what the marketing doesn't tell you. PEA in chocolate is broken down extremely rapidly by an enzyme called MAO before it can cross the blood-brain barrier in significant quantities. So the romantic notion that chocolate floods your brain with a feeling of falling in love is technically overstated. The PEA is mostly metabolized before it gets where it needs to go. However, fermented foods, including sauerkraut, contains significantly higher levels of PEA than chocolate does. And because of how fermented foods interact with the gut microbiome, that PEA appears to be more bioavailable, and more of it actually gets through the blood-brain barrier. So if you are eating chocolate specifically for the love feeling, and a lot of people are, consciously or not, you would, biochemically speaking, be better served by eating some sauerkraut. I appreciate that that's not what everyone wants to hear. And I also appreciate that nobody has ever given their partner a heart-shaped box of sauerkraut for Valentine's Day. But there you go. If you want the love feeling, you're better off eating sauerkraut. And it also tells you something important about the gap between what we think we're getting from chocolate and what we're actually getting. And, also what marketing does. And then there's the melt temperature. Pure cocoa butter melts at precisely body temperature, 37 degrees Celsius. And that's not an accident. And it's why good quality chocolate melts in your mouth in a way that is really nice. It's pleasurable. The fat literally dissolves at the temperature of your body. And that sensory experience is something that's really hard to replicate. It's one of the reasons why cheap chocolate never quite delivers the same satisfaction. Your body knows the difference even when your brain doesn't consciously register it. That's also relevant to why you can eat large amounts of cheap chocolate and still feel unsatisfied. And then you eat some more still. The sensory signals your body is looking for, the melt, the specific fat, it never quite arrives, so you keep looking. When you look at all those things together, you can see that for cheap chocolate, you can eat a lot of because you don't quite hit the markers. When chocolate gets substituted by other ingredients, you get less of the theobromine, the magnesium, the anandamide, and the fat gets replaced by other fats. So when you eat cheap chocolate, you can usually eat quite a lot of it because your body is looking for those ingredients. It's looking for the high quality ingredients and it doesn't get it. So it keeps on looking. Yeah, not an excuse. It's reality. There you go. That's what it is. It's reality. The gender question, hormones, marketing, and who chocolate is really for. Walk into any supermarket and look at the chocolate aisle. And then you look at how chocolate is advertised, the voiceovers, the imagery, the language, the women alone with their chocolate, eyes closed, experiencing something that looks less like eating a snack and more like a private spiritual experience. So, who is chocolate being sold to? And it's mostly women. Overwhelmingly, persistently, deliberately, it's women. And there are two reasons for this. One is biochemical and one is commercial. And understanding both changes how you see every chocolate advertisement you'll ever watch again. So, the biochemical reason. We talked about magnesium in the previous chapter. Women, particularly in the luteal phase of the menstrual cycle, the 2 weeks before menstruation, experience a significant drop in magnesium levels. The body's demand for magnesium increases, and as magnesium drops, so does serotonin, which is partly dependent on magnesium for its synthesis. Lower serotonin means lower mood, increased anxiety, increased irritability, the classic premenstrual picture. So, what does the body reach for? Something that provides magnesium and temporarily boosts serotonin. Dark chocolate does both. So the premenstrual chocolate craving is not weakness, it's not lack of willpower, it's your body making a biochemically intelligent request. There, that's it. I really thought about it. A week ago, I drove through the night to be with my mum. and she passed a few days later. It was an amazing time. We were all there. We took turns to be with her, to sit with her, keeping her company so she wouldn't be alone. It was a hard time, but it was also very precious. I had a lot of time to think. So many people go through something difficult right now, and so many people are doing it alone. It's as if time stands still whilst the rest of the world keeps turning. And maybe they're not sure how to get back into it, or perhaps even if they want to. And I know that feeling because I sat with it this week. So when I'm back in the UK, I'm going to open up a small number of one-to-one sessions. Just us, you and I, 90 minutes. Whatever you're carrying, whether it's your health, your life, your next step, the things you can't quite say out loud to anyone else, I can sit with you, help you see more clearly, and help you find the next step for when you're ready to take that next step. The spaces are limited, since, as you can imagine, I've got quite a lot going on at the moment. So do check availability and book your time at thequalityoflife.quest/personal-chat. I'll see you there. The problem is that most of the chocolate available to satisfy that craving is so processed, so diluted with sugar and vegetable fat, that the magnesium content is significantly reduced from what you'd find in pure dark chocolate or raw cacao. Your body asks for medicine and it gets confectionery. The commercial reason? The food industry identified women as the primary emotional consumer of chocolate decades ago. Not because women are more emotional, but because women were historically the primary purchaser of food for households. And because the emotional marketing of chocolate, comfort, reward, self-care, romance, mapped more easily onto social narratives about women's lives. And so the marketing has been relentless. It's been gendered. The flake advert, the Cadbury caramel bunny, the Dove chocolate campaigns, the endless parades of women alone with chocolate as a stand-in for self-care, for treating yourself, for the reward at the end of a difficult day. That marketing is not accidental, it's not innocent. It's deliberately designed to attach chocolate to emotional states that are then designed to feel unresolvable without chocolate. You're stressed? Chocolate. You deserve a treat? Chocolate. You're sad? Chocolate. You're celebrating? Chocolate. Every emotional state becomes a potential chocolate occasion. And then, having successfully attached chocolate to every emotional state a woman might experience, the industry turns around and sells diet products, guilt reduction messages, and only 99 calories chocolate alternatives to resolve the guilt that the original marketing created. It's a remarkably elegant closed loop. Create the emotional need, supply the product. Create the guilt about the product, supply the solution to the guilt. Repeat indefinitely. So what about men? Because men eat chocolate too. Of course they do. But the marketing is different. Chocolate marketed at men tends to emphasize performance, energy, and practicality. A protein bar, an energy boost, something functional. The emotional vulnerability marketing is largely absent. And that tells you everything about how the industry perceives and exploits genders differently. Now, what can you do with this information? You don't have to stop eating chocolate, but you can start seeing the marketing for what it is, a commercial construction designed to keep you in a purchasing loop, not a genuine reflection of your needs. And you can start distinguishing between a chocolate craving that is your body genuinely asking for magnesium, in which case a couple of squares of good quality dark chocolate is a reasonable response, and the chocolate reach that is conditioned response to an emotional state that the marketing has successfully attached to chocolate over decades. One is your body talking, the other one is marketing talking. And learning to tell the difference is the beginning of a different relationship with chocolate entirely. Chapter 5. The price of chocolate, shrinkflation, dilution, and why chocolate in the United States tastes different. So for me, the chocolate peanuts priced themselves out of the market. The price went up whilst the amount or grams in a bag went down. Same shelf space and similar packaging, just less chocolate peanuts for more money. And that's called shrinkflation. It's happening across the entire chocolate industry, and not just chocolate. It happens with other products as well. But yeah, you've probably noticed it, maybe without naming it, but the chocolate bar that used to feel satisfying now feels slightly less so. And the sharing bag that used to last 2 people an entire evening now, hardly covers 1. The manufacturers are not reducing their margins. They're maintaining them or increasing them, whilst reducing the product. The price holds or rises. The quantity quietly shrinks. The shape of the chocolate bar just is slightly redesigned so that you don't immediately notice the reduction. And there's one famous example of that. Toblerone famously widened the gaps between its peaks in 2016, reducing the bar from 400 grams to 360 grams at the same price. And the public noticed. And there was a genuine outrage. And in the end, Toblerone reversed the change, but only after the PR damage became commercially significant. And the Toblerone incident is instructive because it shows that manufacturers know exactly what they're doing, and they know that consumers prefer to pay more for the same amount rather than receive less for the same price, even though economically these are similar propositions. The psychology of the packet matters more than the mathematics of the price per grams. But shrinkflation is only part of the story. There's also dilution. As cacao prices rise, and they have been rising significantly, with cacao futures hitting record highs in recent years due to crop failures in West Africa, climate disruption, supply chain pressures, manufacturers face a choice. They either raise the prices, reduce the quantity, or change the quality. Most do all 3 in varying combinations. So reducing quality means that you substitute expensive ingredients with cheaper ingredients. So, for example, vegetable fats instead of cacao butter. More sugar to compensate for less cacao. Milk powder of lower grade. Artificial flavorings to replace the complex natural flavor compounds that are lost when you reduce the actual cacao content. The result can be a product that is nominally chocolate. It contains some cacao, but that bears an increasingly distant relationship to what chocolate actually is. And your body notices it. Your body notices it even when your brain doesn't. The melt is wrong, the flavor is thinner, the satisfaction is incomplete, so you eat more, which from a manufacturer's perspective is not a problem. Why does chocolate in the United States taste so different from chocolate in the United Kingdom and the European Union? It's a genuine phenomenon that has confused and horrified many British people who've encountered, let's say, US chocolate for the first time. And when you do research, it comes up with a particular brand that has countered the American market. I'm not going to mention the name. I don't want a lawsuit. But yeah, you can look it up and you will come across it when you do some research. The answer to the question is butyric acid. There's a chocolate company that in the early 1900s developed a process for partially lipolyzing the milk fat in their chocolate, essentially beginning the process of breaking down the fat. And this produced butyric acid as a byproduct. And butyric acid is the same compound found in, for example, Parmesan cheese, but also in vomit. And the flavor is distinctly sour, it's slightly cheesy, and to a palate trained on British or European chocolate, it is deeply wrong. But here's the fascinating part. This company became so dominant in the American market that generations of Americans grew up with that particular taste. It became what chocolate tastes like to them. So it became comfort and childhood and home. And when American expats abroad encounter that particular brand, they often feel a wave of nostalgia. And when British people encounter it for the first time, they wonder if something has gone off. Neither response is wrong. Both are conditioned. Both are a reminder that taste is not objective. It is a memory, a culture, and a particular version of a thing you encountered first. And then there's also the regulation dimension. The EU and the UK chocolate regulations require a minimum of at least 25% cacao solids in milk chocolate. The US regulations require only 10%. The minimum in the UK is more than double the American minimum. The result is a product that is legally chocolate in both jurisdictions. But that is, in terms of actual cocoa content, a completely different food. And the Cadbury's sold in the United States is not the same Cadbury's made in Great Britain. It's manufactured under license by a different company, and the recipe is different. The taste is different. And British expats in America report this consistently and with considerable feeling. Cacao is grown abundantly in West Africa. Côte d'Ivoire together produce roughly 60% of the world's cocoa. The crop is extraordinarily sensitive to climate. Temperature, rainfall, humidity, it all affects the yield significantly. And climate disruption has been causing increasingly instability in cocoa production, leading to supply shortages and price spikes. Meanwhile, global demand for chocolate continues to rise, particularly from emerging middle classes in Asia. More people wanting chocolate, less reliable supply of cocoa, rising costs throughout the supply chain. The economics point in one direction: less actual chocolate in your chocolate bar for more money, indefinite. The economics point in one direction: less actual cacao in your chocolate bar for more money, indefinitely into the future, unless you choose differently. Pure cacao, the raw cacao powder, cacao nibs, high percentage dark chocolate with genuine cacao content is actually better value in terms of what you're getting per gram of active compounds. Yes, it's more expensive per bar, but you need less of it because the satisfaction is genuine and complete. The melt is right. The magnesium is there. The theobromine is there. Your body gets what it was asking for and stops asking. That's not a marketing claim. It's the difference between giving your body what it actually needs and giving it an increasingly diluted approximation of what it needs indefinitely, in increasing quantities, at increasing cost. Chapter 6. The human cost. Who pays for your chocolate? And the next bit is a bit uncomfortable. It's not to make you feel guilty. It's just part of the story. And it involves people who you never see, and they don't get the recognition they deserve. And there's some issues surrounding that as well. Anyway, here we go. West Africa and child labor. Approximately 1.5 million children work in cocoa farming in Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana. And it's not a fringe statistics from a campaigning organization. This is documented by the US Department of Labor, by academic research, by the chocolate industry's own commissioned reports. Those children, some as young as 5, work in conditions that include use of dangerous tools, exposure to agricultural chemicals, carrying heavy loads, and working long hours in intense heat. Many are not attending school. Some have been trafficked from neighboring countries, separated from the families, working without pay or for minimal payment that never reaches them. The major chocolate manufacturers have known about this for decades. In 2001, an international protocol, the Harkin-Engel Protocol, was signed by the major industry players committing to eliminate the worst forms of child labor in cocoa by 2005. That deadline was missed. It was then extended to 2008. It was missed again, extended to 2010, missed, extended to 2020. And the most recent assessment suggests that child labor in cocoa farming has not significantly decreased and may have increased in some areas. And the reason is economics. Cocoa farmers in West Africa receive, on average, less than 6% of the retail price of a chocolate bar. Less than 6 pence in every pound you spend on chocolate reaches the farmer who grew the cocoa in the first place. The rest goes to processors, manufacturers, retailers, shareholders. But for farmers operating on those margins, the use of unpaid or underpaid child labor it's not a moral choice. It's an economic survival strategy in a system that has been structured to extract maximum value at minimum cost from the people at the bottom of the supply chain. And it's not a problem that individual consumers can fully solve. It's a structural problem and it requires structural solutions. Fairer trading relationships, genuine living wages for cocoa farmers, enforceable regulations with real consequences for non-compliance. Consumer pressure matters, but it's not sufficient on its own. Agricultural labor more broadly. It would be convenient to locate this problem entirely in West Africa and feel that it is someone else's issue, but it isn't. Agricultural labor is poorly paid and physically demanding in most parts of the world, including the UK. Fruit and vegetable pickers in the British fields, strawberries in Kent and also in Herefordshire, asparagus in Worcestershire, and yeah, as I said before, there's a lot of soft fruit in Herefordshire, and we've got some asparagus here as well. They are picked predominantly by migrant workers earning low wages. It's physically exhausting work in all weathers. They're often housed in accommodation provided by the employer. And yeah, there is a kind of power dynamic between employer and worker in seasonal agricultural labor. And it's not nice. The vulnerability is significant. The visibility is low. And I've seen it on both sides of that equation. I've seen it from the farmer's point of view as well. When I worked in the Netherlands, I was working for a soft fruit producer. The first job I had, well, no, that's not just the first job I had. Horticulture is the main thing where I grew up, and my summer jobs were mostly in horticulture. And once I'd finished university, my first job was at a soft fruit producer. And the government, in its infinite wisdom, had decided that we couldn't employ any more foreign nationals. We had to employ people who were Dutch and were living on benefits. And it was quite amazing what happened when we were looking for pickers. The applications we got were mostly rubbish. Some of them were even written on toilet paper. People who didn't put any effort in the writing of the CV at all, or the cover letter. From the people who were invited to come and interview, only a couple showed up. And when we finally made the choice for one particular gentleman, he didn't show up on his first day at work, and he also didn't let us know that he wasn't going to come. So when he didn't come, we were quite worried that we had, we thought he had been an accident or something between home and work, and he just didn't fancy coming, as it turned out. So that's also one side of the equation. I know that the places where I've worked, my wage was fair for the work I did, but it was, for summer jobs, that's okay. For Saturday jobs, that's okay. If you are young and you live with your parents, if you have to feed a family of it, it's quite difficult. And in both the Netherlands and Great Britain, in Great Britain it's kind of changed now because of Brexit, but before, if you were from, let's say, Eastern Europe, and you worked the agricultural season here, and you really put in the work, the money you would earn here would go very far in your home country. And I know several people who've paid for their study and then some by working in the Netherlands or Great Britain. So yeah, it's an issue. It is an issue. Interesting to see that it's not just Great Britain or the Netherlands or Africa. The age thing is something that doesn't really happen here. That's more for over there. But yeah, it's an interesting thing. And then to know that without agriculture and horticulture, you can't really live. Anyway, that's a different tangent. So food on your table, whether it's chocolate or strawberries or asparagus or your salad leaves, it's got human hands behind it, and hands that are not necessarily well paid, or in the chocolate example, and not that well protected and not particularly well seen. It's not comfortable, and I'm not going to pretend that it is. I think it's worth a discussion. You make up your own mind. So, what can you actually do? When we get back to the chocolate story, you can buy fair trade certified chocolate wherever possible. Fair trade certification, it doesn't solve everything. The structural problems are too deep for a certification scheme to fix alone. But it does mean that a higher percentage of the price reaches the farmer, and that child labor standards are monitored, and that there is at least some accountability in the supply chain. Buy a higher percentage dark chocolate with genuine cocoa content from traceable sources. Smaller craft chocolate makers, and there are excellent ones in the UK, often have direct relationships with specific farms and can tell you exactly where their cocoa comes from and under what conditions it was grown. And if you want to reduce your overall chocolate consumption, which might be the outcome of listening to this, it's not the goal, but it might be something you could consider, then making that smaller amount of higher quality and more ethically sourced chocolate is the simplest, easiest way to align with your consumption, with the values, without requiring dramatic sacrifices. And you don't have to fix the global cocoa industry with your shopping basket, but you can make a choice that is at least informed. And informed choice is always better than unconscious consumption. The invitation, a different relationship with chocolate. So up till now, we've had 6 chapters and we covered a lot of ground. The history, biochemistry, gender marketing, shrinkflation, dilution, the human cost, and remember, the sauerkraut. So if you step back from all that information itself doesn't change behavior. You can also see that in the sugar series that I've done. And if you listen to this in sequence when it comes out, that was last week. If information changes behavior, I wouldn't have eaten the chocolate peanuts. And I would not eat sugar either. It's not information that is the thing. So what does change behavior? And in this case with chocolate specifically. In my experience, and in 26 years of working with people on their health and their habits, this is what I keep on seeing, that what changes is the relationship, not the rules, not the restrictions, not the detox or the 30-day challenge or the decisions to never eat chocolate again, which lasts until, well, whatever, 2 days from now. It's the relationship, and a relationship can only change when you understand what it actually is, not what you tell yourself it is, what it actually is. I'm not going to give you a plan. I'm not going to give you a protocol. That wouldn't sit well with me, and I'm just guessing that it won't sit well with you either. But you can ask yourself a couple of questions, and you can ask yourself what it is you want to achieve. So, what is chocolate actually doing for you? Not what you tell yourself it's doing, but what is it actually doing? Is it providing magnesium your body genuinely needs? Is it a moment of genuine pleasure in a day that doesn't have enough pleasure at all? Is it a reward system you've built around yourself that now runs automatically? Is it self-medication for something that isn't being addressed directly? Is it comfort in the absence of connection? Is it the one thing that feels reliably good when other things feel unreliable? And none of the answers are wrong. They are all information for you. And the information tells you what you actually need. And that may or may not be chocolate. And is the chocolate that you're eating actually giving you what you're looking for? So we've talked about the dilution, we've talked about the shrinkflation, we talked about vegetable fat substituting for cocoa butter. If you're eating cheap chocolate in significant quantities and still feel unsatisfied, still reaching for more, it is worth asking whether your body is generally getting what it asked for or whether it is still waiting. Dark chocolate is one answer. Not because it tastes, well, it doesn't taste the same as milk chocolate, but it doesn't taste the same and the mouthfeel is slightly different. And you're right to notice that. But because a smaller amount of really good quality dark chocolate, high cocoa content, real cocoa butter, minimal additives, often satisfies what the body was actually asking for in a way that 3 times as much milk chocolate doesn't. It's not about virtue, it's about whether the craving resolves or persists. Can you be present with it? The Mayans drank cacao in ceremony, together, with attention. The cacao was medicine and it was treated as such, with intention, with present, with respect for what it was doing. We eat chocolate whilst we're scrolling, while watching, while working, while doing approximately 4 other things simultaneously. The eating is almost incidental to whatever else is happening. So what would it be like to eat chocolate the way the Mayans drank cacao? To sit with it, to actually taste it, to let it melt at exactly body temperature as it was designed to do, and notice what happens, to eat one square with full attention rather than half a bar with none. It's not deprivation, it's pleasure taking seriously, and pleasure taking seriously is almost always more satisfying than pleasure consumed on autopilot. As I said earlier, the dark chocolate is one strategy, it is, but I want to be honest about what it is and what it isn't. It isn't milk chocolate and it doesn't taste exactly the same. The mouthfeel is different. The sweetness is less. If what you love about chocolate is the specific creaminess, the sweetness, the particular comfort of milk chocolate, dark chocolate is not the same thing, and pretending it doesn't help anyone. What dark chocolate is a way of getting more of what the body is actually asking for: magnesium, theobromine, anandamide, and in a smaller amount with less sugar, with real cocoa butter rather than vegetable fat. If you can develop a taste for it, and many people do gradually as their palate adjusts, it often means eating less overall because the satisfaction is more complete. You can start at 70% if you haven't already, and 90% is an acquired taste that takes time. 70% is more accessible. Give it a couple of weeks of occasional squares and then notice whether the craving changes or don't. There's no rule here. There's only your body, your relationship with the chocolate, and the information you now have that you didn't have before. So, the invitation. I can't give you a different relationship with chocolate. Nobody can give you that. But I can tell you what I've seen creating the conditions for it. Understanding what chocolate actually is, where it came from, what it does, what the industry has done to it, what it costs in human terms. You have that now. Curiosity about what you're actually reaching for when you reach for chocolate. That's yours to develop gently without judgment. And support, if you want it. A conversation about your specific situation, your body, your habits, your relationship with food and comfort and reward. That isn't generic advice, but it's actually about you. That's what this is. It isn't a meal plan. It's not a detox. It's, I don't have a meal plan. I don't have a detox. If you want to, we can have a 90-minute conversation. The link is somewhere in the description where we can look at your specific picture and find what actually makes sense for you. Take this for what it is and do with it whatever you want to do with it. You've got a lot of information, as I said, the history, the biochemistry, the sauerkraut twist. Yeah, try eating little bits of sauerkraut. See whether that makes any difference. I'm going to try it. If something in this podcast has made you think differently about your relationship with chocolate, or if you'd like to explore what that relationship actually is, specifically for you, I'm here, link below. If not, the sauerkraut information is free and will haunt you forever. You're welcome. See you.